So I'm going to caveat this by saying I'm not a bait maker. I really actually don't know anything about making bait, but I've started making my own hook baits. Now, primarily, I'm only really using CC More products. Actually, I'm really only using CC More products, but I've really enjoyed getting out into Europe. Hopefully you've watched a few of my other videos. I've loved getting out into Europe, and the last trip I went on I decided to make my own hook baits. And the reason for that was that I felt like I was going to a lot of effort to find new lakes, to put effort in to be a bit more active around discovering new places, and I felt like making my own hook baits was kind of like the next step to, you know, doing a bit more on my own. Now, I've always been someone that goes to a shop and purchases hook baits. I'm quite specific about what I do and I don't like. I like a fish meal, I like a pink, and I like a yellow. And one of the things we're going to make today, or I'm going to make today, is using this fluoro yellow hard hook bait making kit. And the reason I'm going specifically hard hook baits is because I'm fishing in Europe a lot. I also live in the Lee Valley, so I fish on a lot of crayfish based waters, and I want a set of hook baits that will last the duration, overnight mostly. And what I've found, particularly on these public lakes, is I don't really like fishing with mesh. I don't like fishing with the plastic covering that some of the bait companies, some of the big companies make. What I do like doing though is really hardening the baits and then drying them, soaking them, drying them, soaking them, getting as much flavour as I can into them. And once I've done that, I feel confident that they'll at least give me 12 to 15 hours through the night, particularly on warm waters that are absolutely caked in poisson chat and all the other nuisance species that you're going to come up against. I'm going to talk you through what I do. None of it to me is rocket science, because I just buy all the products and chuck them in based on what I think works or what has worked. And off the back of a really good recent trip using my own hook baits, I've really come to settle with what I make. So I'm going to make some yellow, some pink and some Pacific tuna hook baits with my own type of flavouring, and I'm going to talk you through them now. Okay, super simple stuff this. I'm going to talk you through the flavours that I use, because let's be honest, nothing is a secret anymore anyway. I'm going to talk you through what I'm putting into these sort of slightly fruitier baits. One thing I should mention is I'm experimenting with my Canon R50 today as my main camera, which I haven't done before. I've got a big boom mic on there, a cheap one, and I just want to see how this goes really. So apologies if the ISO is a little bit bright with the sun coming down, etc. So we're going to give it a go between an action camera and a Canon, trying to be a little bit more filmography and give it a little bit more production style, although in reality I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. So we're going to start off with the following. The basis of the mix is ultra tuna essence in terms of the liquid. I then like to put a little bit of Scopex mix in. You've got to be careful with this stuff, it really takes over the bait. So I'm going to use almost a fifth of what I use in tuna essence for a 1 egg mix. I also, this might sound a bit odd, but I like to use a little bit of plum. I really like this flavour. I think it's like gives you a real undercurrent under the tuna, and I think others will maybe disagree, proper bait makers, but I think it goes really well with the tuna. On top of that, we're going to chuck in some liquid GLM. I've got some Himalayan rock salt, of course. Liquid preservative obviously is a must, that will have to go in. And then in terms of powders, I like to put a very small amount of betaine, so that will go in. A little bit of garlic powder. I've been doing a lot of reading on this stuff, and garlic powder, specifically this kind of grade of garlic powder, and I don't think I would ever not have it in a hook bait nowadays. So that will be going in, and then on top of that, obviously we've got some krill meal, and I put a little bit of the krill meal in the main bait. I don't want too much powdered stuff in there because it affects the consistency, but I like to coat my baits in them as well. One thing I will just say, I've realised that I said we were going to make some yellow baits. I'm actually going to start off by making some hard hook baits with the hook bait making kit. Really simple stuff to use. It comes with a little bit of tuna essence in there as well, so you've got everything that you need. It is a bit of an outlay initially, but I found that it saves so much money on hook bait pots, although that wasn't my main aim. The saving the money wasn't the most important part. What was the most important part was making a bait that I felt a little bit of pride in when I was using. So we're going to get cracking. The other thing I've missed out quickly is I do like a little bit of Feedstim powder in there as well. So that does look like quite a lot of stuff to be going in to one hook bait, but nevertheless, that's what I like to go in there on a 1 egg mix. So let's get cracking. So I'm going to start off with the egg because I like to get all the wet components mixed up first. Really simple. I'm going to treat you like a child here, but it's egg in the bowl. Don't worry if you get a little bit of shell in there. I don't think that makes a massive difference. Now, I've got the egg in the bowl. I'm going to start with my liquid components. Kids, Nurofen pipette. Probably best not to use this for the kids after I've used it with the tuna, that's for sure. So, simple stuff. I'm actually going to put a slightly over heightened amount of liquid in this. I'm going to go with 4 ml to 1 egg. Now, if you're a bait maker and you're watching this, you might be thinking, holy hell, that's a lot. And I understand that. I'm not a bait maker, but that's what's worked for me. Green lipped mussel, so GLM. This is the Ultra Essence. Obviously you can buy the powdered version as well. We're going to go in with 3 ml for a single egg. Lid on, definitely. That stuff reeks. Then we're going to go in with Scopex, and this is the one I said you've got to be careful. You could definitely get away with not using the Scopex, but I love it. So we're going to go with 1, as close as we can, to 1 ml, and I guarantee, especially with this CC Moore Scopex, you will still smell that even with 1 ml in there. Plum, of course, has to go in. Now the plum I'm going to go with half of the tuna. I don't want it to reek of the plum, so we're going to go with about 2 ml, just so it kind of carries a little undercurrent of the plum. And the reason I like to use the plum is because I do like to use these baits deep into the autumn, even into the beginning of winter, just so there's a little bit of a fruity component in there. And finally, we are going to add our liquid preservative. We're going to go relatively brave with this. I'm going to go 3 ml, maybe 1 more ml in there actually. And it goes, lovely. Okay. Once that's all in, get it all out of the way. Give it a good stir. Should have brought a fork down really, but I haven't. I've just bought a spoon. So we're going to give it a good stir. Obviously you've still got the egg mix in there. Likes to be beaten up properly before you get to mixing the powders in. Now, what I would say is I like to put, let's get that to one side, I like to put all of my specialist powders in before I start putting the Pacific Tuna hard hook bait making mix in. So let's do that now with the powders, and I'll talk you through how much I'm going to add. This is where obviously you need the scales, so I'm going to zero them off. We're going to start with our Feedstim. Doesn't matter what order you do this in. I'm going to put around about 3 grams of Feedstim. It's really easy to overdo this. That is bang on. I actually got that right first time. Okay, 3 grams of Feedstim, super soluble. I think every bait I make has Feedstim in. Betaine, I always put a little bit of betaine in. We're just going to go with just a little sprinkle, probably about 2 grams. There it is, in it goes. Lid goes on. A little bit of garlic powder, again, easy to overdo, but I think the fish just love garlic. I think this is a really important part of baits that I've been making lately, and I think a lot of bait makers that I've spoken to would agree with that. Krill meal, so obviously it's just super fish meal, super bait. I don't really measure this, I just like to sprinkle it in. Don't go crazy with it because I'm actually going to use it to form a crust around the Pacific Tuna baits anyway. And then finally, if you've ever fished with Pacific Tuna CC Moore, you'll know they're incredibly salty if you ever decide to nibble one, but you can taste or always smell that salty element. And for the salt, I don't really measure it, I just take a pinch, in it goes, usually 2 pinches. Sometimes I feel like that's maybe a bit too much, but nevertheless, it's in there now. And then what you've got is kind of like a half powdered mix and your egg yolk. Now again, I just caveat, I don't really profess to know what I'm doing with bait making and the reason that baits work and, you know, olfactory glands and all that sort of stuff, but the great thing now is with the power of Google, ChatGPT and all that sort of stuff, you can really figure out something that works for you. And what I wanted was a bait that I felt matched my Pacific Tuna baits. in the darker fish meal to mix with something else. And I also make a pink version of this in a slightly smaller, or I have been making it smaller lately, a slightly smaller bait. If you watch anything of Elliot Gray, he fishes with like a spicy squid pink quite often. Effectively, we're replicating that, but with a tuna base. And of course with the Scopex and plum in there. Okay, that's relatively well mixed. I'm not going to take too much care over it. Okay, we're going to get on to add in the main part of our mix, which is our hard hook baiting mix now. Everything that we need is in there apart from that. Time to start mixing. Okay, here we go. Really, really simple this. I wouldn't take too much care over it. Everybody says you should really be careful when spooning this stuff in, but you've got to get started. So I'm going to go in with 3 really big spoonfuls. Simple stuff. Start mixing it. I think if you've got like a bread maker and you're happy for your missus or even yourself really to ruin it, then great, use that. First thing I like to do is kind of make a paste with it, and once that paste is made, then you can start just mixing it in whatever you feel is the right amount. Could measure it in, I guess, but obviously you're looking for it to stiffen up into a paste. And what I do, once it's stiffened into that paste, I'll actually roll it into a ball, and I will, with my hands, so be prepared to have a shower afterwards and a proper wash, I roll it into a ball, and then I will put it into a plastic bag for about 15 minutes, just to let all the flavour settle and soak into the powder, let the powder absorb all of the flavours that it might not have already done. There you go, look, just starting to get, probably see there, but starting to get a slightly harder base smell. This is probably going to make about 40 baits, you know, which I think is enough. You could do a 2-egg mix, that's usually what I would do, but for the sake of ease here, I'm just going with 1 egg. And then effectively I just knead in the powder, no different to as if you were making bread, whether you've made bread or not, I don't know, but make sure you push your thumb through it all and get as much of that base mix into it as possible. I think I've used just the right amount here actually. I think we're going to get away with this. So we'll mix this up and then take you on to the next step. Okay, so there we go. You can probably see that there. I'm not sure how well that'll show up on the focus, but we have got a paste ball really. I've left it slightly tacky. Here's one I prepared earlier. I've got myself a bag just out of sight there. All I'm going to do, really simple, chuck it in the bag, try and squeeze as much of the air out as possible, give it a twizzle, put it to one side, wallop, and that is your paste made. So the next step with that is obviously going to be to chuck it into a piper, pipe it out at the size that you want, chuck it on a rolling table, roll it, and then we're going to get to that bit a bit later on. In the meantime, I'm going to make some yellow ones with a different flavour profile and talk you through that. Okay, here we go, straight onto my yellow mix. Now, when you look at the yellow mix from CC Moore in the tub, it does look incredibly fluorescent. But one thing I'd say is once you actually get to using it, it really comes out like a real egg yolky colour, which I love. So we're going to start off. These are going to be like a pineapple, primarily a pineapple profile, and they're going to be slightly over flavoured. Whoop, there they go, with the pineapple. So 5 ml of pineapple into a 1 egg mix. Again, listen to loads of Frank Warwick stuff. Not technically, but he always talks about over flavouring. So yeah, why not? This is a banana essence, again from CC Moore. By the way, it's not an advert for CC Moore. I just like what they do. 3 ml of banana. So the pineapple is the main profile, and the banana, kind of like the plum in the tuna, just sits beneath that. And then I've also got a creamy condensed milk flavour, and we're not going to go heavy with that. We're just going to go 2 ml. Again, just sits behind the primary flavourings. Now we're going to add in a little bit of tally sweet, and this is the one thing I never really know how much to use, so we're going to be sensible and we are just going to use 2 ml of this. So suck it out, here it goes, down it goes, and that's in there, and that is all of the liquids ready to be used. Okay, that's everything. You might hear the dogs barking. I've just sent them back indoors, but hopefully they won't affect the sound. I'm going to give all the liquids a quick mix. nothing too drastic. Once they're mixed, a little spoon, we're going to chuck in the powders. Not many of the powders for this one really. I still like, even though it's a sweet mix, still like a little bit of rock salt. I don't like to go too heavy. I've spoken to a few people and they always say that it just offsets the flavour profile, whatever that means. You tell me. I still like a little bit of Feedstim. Now I know roughly what 2 to 3 mil of that is, so that's going in. Don't have to be super specific, but I have written these recipes down so that I can remember them, just in case I ever got bashed over the head for whatever reason. And then we've got some betaine going in, also about 2 mil. And that is going to be it. So in comparison to the tuna, the darker fish meal, it's actually a relatively simple bait mix, this one. To be honest with you, none of them are complicated, because it's not like the olden days where I would have had to have sourced all the ingredients myself and all that sort of stuff. All I'm doing here really is buying the key components and choosing what I want to use, just to make something stand out that little bit more, without having to cake it in a load of aftermarket goo or whatever else every other company provides. Okay, so that is the liquid mix mixed together. Now time to get in the yellow. Now one of the things I like about this, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but is that the egg mix goes a nice dark colour. So when you add the yellow mix in, it actually keeps it fairly dark. So we're going to be fairly brave here. We're going to whack it in. Probably with the yellow and the pinks, I find you go through a little bit more than you do with all of the other stuff. I don't know if it's a finer mix maybe, but we'll give it a good mix. Oh, I love it. It's especially making like the singles. I use a lot of singles in the winter. I didn't used to. I've got a funny feeling I've just put a bit too much in, not concentrating, but we can save it by mixing another egg. It's easily done. And actually it's probably just where it's caught in the edge. So let's go in with the fingers. Don't mind so much with the pineapple and the banana, because it smells nice. Even the kids like this one. In fact, they usually help out. So we're going to mix this together, simple stuff. Got to say, this CC Moore stuff's really good quality. I can't say I've used any others, but I like that you can just order it in the quantities that you need or you want. You know, it comes to your door. It's all in good tubs. Everything you need's always there. Actually, I've mixed just the right amount there. Look, it's going to be just about right. Might be a bit dry, but again, you can rescue that. Do you know, the one thing I didn't add actually was the liquid preservative. And we will need that, so we're going to try and rescue this by adding it late. That's always the problem with filming yourself. You kind of well, you get a little bit lost in filming yourself, don't you? So in they go. Give it a good squeeze in, and then I'll probably leave this one to rest actually a little bit longer than I have been doing, just so it can absorb that. Yeah, that's better. It's actually taking it back just a bean. A little bit more tacky, and it, you know, if you remember being a kid, it kind of takes it back to being a Play-Doh. I've got to say, you know, 5 years ago, I would never have dreamed of making my own baits. In fact, I think I tried to do it maybe 15 years ago, thinking I was being a smart ass, but I'd never have dreamed of doing this because it just seems so complicated, and I think people do make it more complex than it needs to be, you know, bait makers and whatnot. But actually, if you can buy all the components, which you can, and they do last a long time, believe it or not, making your own hook baits, I think, is the way forward. Get them exactly how you want them. There we go, we've rescued that. Lovely, nice and yellow. Probably can't quite see with the ISO set in there, but once I've got that into a bag, which we'll do now. Oh, there it is. Once we've got that into a bag, left it to rest for a little while. We're not going to make any pink ones today. That will be ready to roll, and we're going to roll 14 millers with that one. So we're going to stop the cameras there, we're going to go and dry up, and we're going to get the rolling tables out ready to go. Right then, so I've got the water on the boil, and it's been about the right amount of time. I can feel that the paste is actually just stiffened up a little bit. We're going to grab it out of the bag, tuck that away, we don't want it blowing away, and what we've got is paste. Lovely. Now you could just use that, if I'm honest, freeze it, wrap it around your baits, and I have been tempted to start doing that, but can't always get away with that in Europe because of the amount of nuisance fish. Big sausage, chuck it into your cylinder. There's plenty of other tools out there other than this, and if I was making more bait, I probably would get myself an electric one, squeeze it down so it's tight, and it'll start sausaging out. From there, I'm actually going to roll some 20, I think this is a 22 miller, can't quite remember now, but We're just going to do one roller at a time, just to keep it so nice and simple. Cut it off. I'm going to roll it out. Now, if you're making your own baits, the one thing you do have to get used to is the fact that it won't necessarily make the most perfect cylindrical circles. I don't mind that personally. Actually, these have come out quite nicely. You always get the odd off cut, but I quite like a different size bait, so I'll hand roll that myself. And then I'm actually just going to, for now, lay them on a net that I can pick them up. And that's it. You just keep going. Roll your sausages out. Don't be in too much of a rush. These actually look really good. I'm really pleased with these colouring. I think these are going to be nice baits, and I can smell the flavour profile. Give them a roll. Sorry if I'm rocking the table. Okay, I'm going to get all of these rolled because I only made a 1 egg mix. Little barrel, that one, that's good. I'm going to get all of these rolled, and then we're going to dump them into. I'm actually going to talk you through how I cook them, boil them, steam them, etc., and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've rolled them all out. I reckon I've probably got about 30 baits there, which is pretty much what I said I thought it would make, really. Now, I'm going to steam my baits. Oh, bloody hell, that's hot. I'm going to steam mine. And my advice is, and this is only really what I've been told and what I've read, but my advice is if you're going to steam them, you want to do it a little bit longer than boiling, especially as we want these to be hard hook baits. So I'm going to steam them for about 5 minutes, which might seem like quite a long time. But because you're steaming them, you know, the theory is that you're probably keeping the flavour profile in rather than washing it out into the water if you're boiling them. And I know a lot of big bait companies do steam now. So I'm going to put them all in, a bit lazy really, but when you're steaming them, chuck that on top, lid goes on, oh it's hot. When you're steaming them, you know, you are trying to lock in that flavour. We're going to steam them, we're going to roll them out. It's actually sunny today, I'm going to leave them in the sun probably for about 15-20 minutes to cool down, dry out a little bit. Then what I actually do, I know others won't do this, but I chuck them into pots and just leave the pots open, give them a little shake over 48 hours. And at that point I start glugging them up and effectively trying to pump a little bit more flavour profile in that might have been washed out in the steaming process. So simple as that. They're on the boil now, on the steam, and that's going to be a good, you know, that's a good session's worth of bait there. And I'm really pleased with those ones actually. They come out really well. So let's get on to the yellows. Okay, so with the yellows, actually they've come out quite nicely there. I'm really pleased with it. I've actually already made some 18 and 22 millers. Don't really use the 22s much, but you just never know if you're facing a lot of nuisance fish and bream on some of these public waters. Sometimes a big yellow 22 miller, what stands out, does do the job. I do find that sometimes they do pick up the smaller carp, and you do get quick bites because they're so noticeable, I guess. But nevertheless, they do work if you're struggling with bream and eyed and all that other stuff that you get plagued with. So first thing I need to do though is change over the nozzle on the pump. So not used this one before. I think, just testing it, I think it's about the right size. So we'll give this a go. You know, the great thing about making your own is it doesn't have to be too technical and mechanical. Squeeze it in, try not to waste any, Stuart, come on. Nozzle goes on, pump, pump, pump. And we're going to have a go at rolling these out. Now, one thing I will just tell you I've done, just rolled a little bit of cork dust into this mix, literally manually, just rolled it in, didn't mix it in earlier, I should have done. You know, these are going to be used as toppers or as sort of single wafters, bright yellows. But one thing I like about the cork dust is they do dullen the bait a little bit. So yeah, we're going to roll these onto the table. It's going to be a bit stiffer to roll out. That actually does look a bit thin, that, but we're about to find out. Let's do a tester. If it is, we'll change the nozzle again. Oh no, they're perfect. Brilliant. They're going to be bang on, they are. So, just give them a little roll. Oh, they're lovely. That is actually perfect, that side. I'm going to put them straight in to the steamer. Okay, so let's get these done. Yeah, I really like these. These are the first time I've done this size before. Now obviously you see a lot of people making bait on YouTube now, and they definitely know what they're doing better than I do. But nevertheless, come on, yeah, there we go. But nevertheless, I think the fact that I can do it, and I'm rubbish at it, shows that anyone can do this sort of stuff. You know, it is not that difficult. Does it save money? Well, I don't know, maybe, but just cool to do, isn't it? You know, catch on your own hook baits. I think it's a cool thing to do. You know, you don't have to rant and rave about it and tell everyone, but I think having that little bit of just self-pride of knowing that, you know, you've kind of done it yourself, haven't you, really? From top to tail, you've bought your tackle, you've rigged up, you've set up, you've gone to a public lake, even if it is a busy, popular one. You know, you're the only one there. You're fishing with bait that you trust, and oh yeah, by the way, you're fishing with your own hook baits. I think it's great. So let's get these all rolled and we'll crack on from there. Right now, the yellows are on. They're slightly smaller. I'd say they're probably going to come out about 14 mil once they've swollen up and then shrunk, maybe a little bit smaller. So they're going to probably primarily use them for the UK, but they have got a really lovely kind of yellowy colour. They're not fluorescent, but I think they've got a great colour. I really like them. So they're actually going to go in for about 3.5 to 4 minutes because they're a bit smaller. In the meantime, though, we're going to start looking at these fish meal brown baits. Now, remember what I said, you don't always get perfect circles. That really does not bother me personally. You know, half of us, if we're fishing snowman baits, if you do fish snowman, we'll cut them down anyway. But I quite like a bait that's slightly off shape. I think as it moves down through the water and it settles, it will settle with a flutter and help it actually kick out, having watched it in the margin. Is that too technical? I don't know, who knows, but in reality, you've got to believe in what you believe in. I don't think that's voodoo science. You know, if you drop a stone in that's slightly flattened or slightly crimpled at the edge, it will ever so slightly flutter down through and sink slower than a perfect circle ball or a golf ball, say, for example. So I quite like that, you know, it helps it kick out and all the rest of it. These are on the boil, the browns are ready. I'm going to pop them out onto the sun. I'm going to take you over there and show you what I do with them. We're going to leave them for 48 hours in pots, and then we're going to start glugging them. Now, I'm not going to film the glugging and all that sort of stuff. This was really just about making the boilies. I don't think I've done anything complicated today or anything out of the ordinary. Really simple stuff, all single egg, hard hook bait mixes. You could do exactly the same and make your own food grade boilies by not adding the liquid preservative, etc, etc. Completely how you want to make them. I just like making the hard hook baits, and I haven't really got the tools to start making 20 key of bait mix. Maybe in the future, but not for now. And I really like CC Moore Pacific Tuna. I quite like a lot of their other baits, Odyssey as well, but a lot of fish like Odyssey, so you have to be careful. And I tend to pair this with a creamy winterized bait. Now, I'd love to use the creamy bait that CC Moore make, but I actually use mainline cell. It's just what I've always used. I'm open to moving away from it, but you know what it's like, once you're using it, it's really hard to not use it. And I think as a completely contrasting bait, to a degree, it pairs quite nicely with Pacific Tuna, and then it gives you that option. Sometimes I think it's best just to fish with one bait, but I do like having two bait options. I think it gives you more hook bait options, but also I think it gives you gives the fish a chance to, you know, pick different baits up and maybe not get locked into one different type of thing. And then also I use tigers, don't I? So we're going to get them on the boil. We're going to chuck them into pots after they've dried and cooled down for a little bit, and that is the process of making the hook baits that I've been using for the last year or so. So the Pacific Tuna is a tuna, very mild Scopex and plum, and then the yellows are banana essence, pineapple essence with a little bit of condensed creamy milk with some other bits in there, GLM, etc, etc. Have a go at making them yourself. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button. Check out some of the other videos that I've created on some of my European trips. Are they cinematic quality? No, they are not, but I'm out there having fun, and filming actually stops me from feeling quite so twitchy and itchy on the bank, and actually calms me down a little bit, I've noticed. So get out there for your next session, have a go at making baits, and good luck.